Welcome to the Even Better podcast, where your host, Sinikka and Waugh of Your Clear Next Step, brings you exciting content about making communities better by helping people get even better at work.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of the Even Better podcast. This is Sinikka and Waugh, and I am so delighted to welcome you today to another episode where we are trying to continue our mission of helping us have even better workdays so that together we can co-create better communities, right? It's all about helping ourselves have a better day so that we can help build greatness around us. We are co-creating greatness in our workdays, in our lives, and in our communities. And I am delighted to welcome today Chad Brown. Chad, thank you so much for being here.
Sinikka, thanks for having me. I'm excited. I've been listening to a few episodes of your podcast and I've really enjoyed it. I've gotten a lot out of it. So I'm just grateful to be able to contribute to the conversation.
This is great. I'm so delighted to I'm always love meeting new people, and this is great that our circles have crossed. And I am delighted. So the things that I've had a chance to learn about you in our brief time together, and for those of you who haven't met Chad, we are in for a treat today. Chad is a leadership engagement expert. So as I'm learning about Chad, Chad is coming in as one of those people who's been there, done that, right? He's tried this. He's not talking about things he doesn't know. He's coming from a place of having experienced things from the school of hard knocks, having experienced this, having done this, having tried it, having learned the hard way, having learned by experience, by failure sometimes, and by having tried and failed and learned, picked himself back up again, and experienced and learned, and then decided that, hey, from these painful experiences that I've had, let's see if we can make someone else's day better. Instead of sitting with that, instead of struggling with that, let's make his own learnings better, his own journey better, learn from those experiences, learn from those setbacks, do better next time, and then take those learnings and say, hey, when you go through this journey, instead of doing dumb stuff, instead of doing things the hard way, how about if you do stuff the easier way? How about if you listen to some of my stories? How about if you listen to these things that maybe I could have listened to differently, and try this instead of that, try these ways instead of these ways. And so he offers coaching, and he offers insights to help people have an easier time of it. Is that a fair description, Chad?
It's very, very fair, Sinikka. Turns out I'm really good at dumb stuff. It turns out I'm really good. You don't have to be shy at all. Lots and lots of failure. And that has turned into be the gift of my life. I love the work that I get to do. I love the people that I do it with. And I know that each of those moments that were so painful, where I made poor decisions, where I led people poorly, has led me to today. And look, I continue to get them. I continue to fail and learn, and it makes me better. And then my clients get to benefit from it. So lucky them.
Right. And I have to believe that just in the time that we've spent together, I have to believe that you're making new mistakes, right? You're learning
That's
new
right.
things, right? You don't do
Yeah,
the same
probably
stuff.
will make a few of them in this conversation.
Right? And that's part of the joy. I love the folks who have taught me along the way that if we're not struggling, if we're not having setbacks, if we're not having a little pain, then we're not trying hard enough. We're not stretching ourselves. We're not pushing ourselves far enough. We're not trying new things. We got to have a little pain. We got to have a little setback. We got to fall on our tails sometimes, or we're not trying hard enough. And so I love your willingness to just say, "Yep, fell down on that one." But hey, maybe we can learn from that and do even better next time.
Yeah. I would say even more than trying hard enough, I would say we're not creating anything new,
Mm,
both within ourselves and outside of ourselves. And I view this world is a constant evolution. And if we're not creating something new, well, if we're not failing, then we're not creating new. If we're not creating new, the evolution is going on beyond us or ahead of us. And we miss opportunities. We miss opportunities to connect with people. We miss opportunities to build really cool things together. And so I, I just, I see it as like, well, I'm going to fail till I die. That's the game. And as long as I'm willing to see what's there, as long as I'm open to feedback that I may not want to hear or see, but might make me better, then that's the game. And that's my life's mission. And that's the mindset that I want to live by.
I love it. I love it. One of the things that I'm interested in your perspective on as we go through this conversation is that balance between you just talked about your openness to feedback, that I might not want to see that openness to feedback, that willingness to create new things and to hear feedback, and then that balance between that and the tenacity, right? The willingness to keep pushing, the willingness to keep trying. So I want to hear the feedback. I want to hear, okay, try this different way, try this different approach, try a different path, or it's like scaling a tough mountain, or that trail, or reaching that athletic milestone that you want to reach, or reaching that goal that you really want to go after. I want different feedback. I want different perspectives on, maybe try this different approach, try this different workout, try this different way of doing things, but I don't want to give up. Right. I want to keep pushing. I don't want someone to say, Sinikka, you're never going to get there. Just give up, man. You're crazy for thinking this. I want that tenacity. I am tenacious to the core. And I don't want someone to just say, hey, Sinikka, the perspective that you should be looking at, the feedback you should be giving at is, as you failed so many times, just give up, man. That path is just dumb. I don't want that to be that. But so with this balance that so I'm interested in as we go through the stories here, and as we unpack, that's one of the things that I'm interested in particular, and maybe you'll have some stories that come up, but I'm curious
Yeah.
if there are ever any of those that play out in your journey.
Yeah, I mean, it's the meaning we put on the feedback that decides whether or not we keep going or we don't. If the meaning I put on it is, oh, they're right, I'm wrong. There's if we put a shame frame on it, if it's
Mm.
like, oh, this is, I'm not worthy of this, or I'm not good enough to do this, I'm not smart enough to do this, all of the enoughs, that the words that we can put in front of enough. If that's the frame that we receive feedback in, then why would you keep going? Because that's a really desperate and despairing experience. But if it's like, even if somebody says, "Hey, Chad, this is a really dumb path. You should just stop." That is going to fuel me to find out, how do I, maybe not as healthy, prove them wrong, but even more healthy than that, how do I find the path that would work towards what I say I want? If that's true, if their feedback is true, but by the way, not all feedback is capital T truth. It's just people's experience of you. So keeping that frame in mind is really helpful, because then I can say, well, there's probably something useful in there for me, but it's not capital T truth. And so I'm just, that fuels me. That's like, I'm not in shame about it. I'm not wrong, bad, or broken because of it. It's like, oh, this is just a little nudge this way or a little nudge that way, and then I can keep going.
I can keep going. I love it. I love it. So that's going to take us into this topic that we're talking about today, and the topic that we've chosen for the day is the two types of trust. And I love
Hmm.
where I have not pursued this as a topic before, and I'm super excited to see where we're going to go. The two types of trust. So give us a little bit of background on this, on the two types of trust. Where does this come from, Chad?
So this isn't the information that's in this conversation is not going to be new to anybody. I mean, as we talk about it, as people are listening to this, my sense is, because this is what my experience tells me, is that most people are going to hear this and go, "Oh yeah, I knew that, or I understood that." The powerful thing about this conversation is we're going to put language to it, and then we can put actionable items behind it so that we can engage in the kind of trust that is going to allow us to get the vision, allow us to go towards the aim that we say that we want. So this comes about, I mean, everybody lives this out every single day. And after this, hopefully it gives specific language to it that you can start to recognize. So this is talked about. This is not new. This is not me. Like, I didn't reinvent the wheel here. I did put some of my own language on it that's been effective for my clients. But ultimately, this is age old stuff, but having the language around it is going to make it useful.
Nice, nice. Okay, so before we get into this, a little bit of teaser for people as they're starting to listen and they're getting settled in here. So two types of trust we're going to talk about, and this who's this applicable for? So we've got lots of listeners who listen from various lenses. Is this just applicable to people who are leaders? Just applicable to people who go to work? Just applicable to people who are parents? Just applicable? Who's this for? Who's listening?
Only people breathing. If if you're not breathing, turn it off. It's good. You don't need to listen to this. I say that tongue in cheek, but I do really mean it. Is that trust anybody if you want to have a meaningful relationship with somebody to where you're both working towards a goal together, this is essential to understand. So that's who I'm talking to. Now, I work in the context of business leadership, and so it's incredibly applicable there. The stories that I'll share are going to be, or any experience that I'll share are going to be mostly in that context. But look, this is just as relevant with me and my wife as it is with me and my clients, or the CEO and the COO that I work with to help make a more functional relationship. So it's applicable everywhere.
You bet. And your story, let's get a little bit of your story, your background, by your bio, Chad.
Yeah. So man, it's been quite a journey. I'll condense it. I started a media production company in 2009, had a bunch of failed ventures prior to that, some in real estate, some in construction. But there came a moment where I realized I really love media production. I knew that I had remembered in high school I was in the video club, and anyway, so it all culminated to this place where it felt like I had nothing to lose. So I just moved to Southern California and I started this company. And very, very quickly, I mean, part of it was luck. We hit the market, the timing and the equipment all at once to where it really was scalable at at an accessible rate, meaning the equipment got cheaper, the big clients started looking for smaller studios. There's so many things that happen, and we grew really, really, really fast. And I, like most entrepreneurs, most business owners, I realized, oh my goodness, I can't do this alone. I'm going to need other people to help me do this. And I started building out a team very rapidly because I was making promises, writing checks that I couldn't cash without people who to help me. Very familiar to anybody who started a business. They can very much relate to this experience. And we grew fast, and I was an incredibly poor leader. Uh, I was in, I was fully focused on the business, the numbers, the notoriety, the ego of where all this was going. I started to get a reputation and a name in the industry, getting asked to speak from stages, and all of that really went to my head. And ultimately, I was traveling more than 300 days out of the year because in production, you go where the work is, you go where the set is and what's needed there. And I was losing my family. I was turning over employees at an incredible rate. And ultimately, pretty much the only people that were happy were my clients. But what I realized is that when clients didn't want or need me anymore, they were gone. And the people who were remaining are the ones that I were treating the worst.
Yeah.
And so that drove me to I realized I needed to figure something out. This had to turn around. So I hired a business coach. I didn't even know that that was a thing. And he called himself a business coach, but ultimately what he was a life coach. And I don't mean that in like any glib sense of just like he helped me turn everything around in my life. We live holistic lives. We don't live professional lives and personal lives. And that was the one of the things that he helped me realize. The seminal moment for me was in one of our first meetings, and I told him, we were getting familiar with each other, and I said, "Look, man, I'm a family guy. I really, I do this for my family." And he looked me square in the eyes and he said, "You're lying to yourself. And as long as you're lying to yourself, nothing will change." And that broke me. Like in that moment, I literally, I physically sobbed, and internally I was torn apart. I was like, oh my gosh, I have been lying. Um because if that were true, the results would be different. And that's what he helped me. That's what he helped me understand, is that the results indicate what we're actually aiming at. What we have in our lives tell us, when we're talking about feedback, this is feedback. The results that I have in my life show me what I'm aiming at. And so I needed to realign my aim. He helped me get all that clear, built a really strong team, practiced becoming the leader that I wanted to become, and ultimately took it further in success. That business drove it deeper into success, and then ended up selling it, when I realized that this was my true passion. This is what I actually wanted to do, was to help other business owners, founders, and leaders build teams that are meaningful, and have and be clear and honest about the aim that they're really going after. And trust. I love that we're talking about trust, because trust is so crucial to each step of that journey. And I learned so much about it.
Absolutely. Oh, I love that. What a great way to set that up. And here we are at your clear next step in Central Iowa. We're serving at last count we had served 54,000 people, helping them have better work days. Right. The whole idea is helping people in their day to day have a better day so that they can then co-create better communities around them, right? So that we can all co-create better communities around them with this fervent belief that if you've had a crappy workday, at the end of that crappy workday, you're going to drive home well crappily and be less than great to the people you've chosen to spend your life with. But if we have a
Let's
better
hope.
workday, right? That's where you were, right? But if we have a better workday, we're going to be kinder. We're going to be safer drivers. And we're going to be kinder to the people we've chosen to spend our lives with. And they, in turn, are going to have a better night's sleep. They're going to wake up in the morning and they're going to be better to if there are kids involved, they're going to be better students to their teachers. Those teachers are going to have better work days. By Friday, we're going to be tipping the pizza guy generously. And I think about your moment with that business coach, and we have business coaches in our team. I think about your moment with that business coach and how that coach changed the course of your life, and how that then changed the course of your family's life, and then the impact there. And you've got kids, right? And so their teachers' lives and the community that you serve and that you impact, and now the clients that you've helped since then, because one business coach looked you in the eye and said, "You're lying to yourself." And that
Mhm.
right there is an example of someone at work helping you have a better work day, which impacted thousands of lives. That's
Mhm.
right. That's why would you not want to be a part of that?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you don't have to tell me. I mean, I, I think about that moment often, and and the interesting thing about that is I'm continually asking myself, where am I lying to myself today? And that's
Yeah.
been a really seminal question. That's been a really pivotal question for me throughout the journey of my career. And I'm never going to that go, because there are places and ways that we're always lying to ourselves. And the feedback, that's why feedback is such a gift, and feedback from trusted sources. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's so beautiful. Okay, so let's get into this trust. Two types. First type is you called it blind trust.
Yes.
Let's talk about this. What is this?
Yeah, so blind trust. So this is where people are going to really relate to this conversation, I think. As a society, I think we've really done the idea of trust a disservice. And if you're thinking about this in the context of business, I really think that Stephen Covey, I think he was on it when he made the observation that um, business happens at the speed of trust. Success happens at the speed of trust. It's not the speed of technology. It's not the speed of production. It's not any of those things. It's how are we relating to each other? And if we're relating to each other in trust, and we're going to talk not just trust, but this specific kind of trust, then we can actually multiply ourselves, our time, our energy, and our focus. It's
Mhm.
crazy. My clients they're blown away, because this is the one of the very first things I do with them when we're contracted is we do a trust inventory. And we find out, where is it that we're wasting resources because people don't trust each other. And I've got story after story after story where this has been revealed. But people are going to relate to this, because in our culture, I think it's pretty popular for us to engage in blind trust. And we call it, we relate to it, or we call it like it's noble trust. And what I say or what this means is blind trust is I trust you so much that I don't have to pay attention to you.
Mm.
See, look how trustworthy we are. Look how much we trust each other. We don't even have to pay attention to each other because man, I know you're going to do what you say you're going to do. So go do it. Now, the challenge with this is you ask any marriage counselor when they sit down with a couple who's getting divorced or thinking about getting divorced, ask them how many of those couples say that they were surprised by the betrayal that is now leading to the divorce. And there's been studies done on this, and it's something like 65 to 70% of people talk about how they're surprised by the betrayal that happened that's leading to where they are right now. And that's a result of blind trust. It's really easy to see when we put it in the context of a marriage or a couple. But now think about yourself on your team. How much do you ignore what people are up to because you quote unquote trust them? And how many times have you been surprised that somebody wasn't doing something that they said they were doing, or they weren't doing it the way that you thought they were doing it? And then you come across this discovery, and depending on how far down the road it is going to determine how devastating it is.
Oh, yeah.
I am in these conversations on a daily basis where leaders are telling me, I had no idea. I didn't even realize that was going on with this person.
Yep. Yep.
That's because they were okay with, or maybe didn't know another way than just blind trust.
Yeah. So I'm going to say it again because you said it, but if someone was just listening and they didn't have the benefit of having it written down in front of them, blind trust again. I trust you so much that I don't even pay attention to you anymore. So let's put that. So back in that context of marriage, I trust you so much that I'm going to completely ignore you. I trust you so much that I'm going to not pay attention to what you do. And so now I'm taking this to the extreme, but I trust you so much that I'm not going to meet your needs anymore. I'm not going to pay attention to you. I'm not going to give you the love and care and careful attention that you need and deserve and that I would want you to have if I thought about it, if I thought about what I was saying. So now we put it back into a workplace relationship. I trust you so much with this responsibility that I'm not going to follow up and make sure that you're doing it.
Mm-hmm. That's right. That's right. And most people call it trust, but what it really is it's an excuse to preserve energy.
Yeah.
So there's only two aims that a human being has in core aims, right? And then everything comes out of these two core aims. The first one is to keep the spacesuit alive. Stay alive. Whatever it costs, stay alive.
Okay.
The second one is to preserve energy to stay alive.
Okay.
Now, these two aims, and I'm not saying this like it's true. I'm just asking you to consider it. Like maybe
Sure.
what
Sure.
if
Sure.
this is true? Could it explain some of the behavior that we engage in that isn't working? Now, these two things are written into our DNA from millions of years of evolution or millions of years of experience, right? And so we're inheriting these aims. Now, the first one, sure, that's pretty valuable. Stay breathing, keep that heart beating.
Yep.
The second one looks different than it looked when it was written into our DNA, meaning we no longer have to preserve relational energy in order to go get the food or to fetch the water. So, but our brain still wants to engage in that aim, and so we start to shortcut things. So, I'm going to say I trust you, but ultimately my survival brain, my subconscious just doesn't want to spend the energy that it's going to take to pay attention to you.
Mm.
And when I say pay attention, yes, that means like care for, do nice things for, all that sort, but it also means questioning, not questioning like I don't trust you, not questioning like I think you're wrong, but questioning like an inquiry, like with my wife. When I'm not paying attention, I miss the opportunities to ask her like things like, "How am I doing as a husband? What's not working for you? What do you need? Those kinds of questions are going to reveal breakdowns. They're going to reveal little wedges that could ultimately result in a betrayal. And when I use the word betrayal, I don't mean cheating or infidelity. That it could reveal that way, or it could just be emotional separation.
Yep.
It could just be missed commitments.
Yep.
That's that's all of that sort of stuff. So it's really interesting to take a look at the psychology side of it and say, oh, well, this is a survival mechanism that I'm innate with, and no problem. I can actually utilize that energy and that focus now because I don't need to preserve it to go find food. I can now use it to stay connected to you and pay attention to you in a way that would be meaningful.
This is so interesting. So I've used this example multiple times in our leadership classes, and I often get pushback like, no, no, Sinikka, this wasn't your fault. And I always own it as, no, this, I own this. This was my bad. And so I'm going to share this example because I think what I did was I offered up blind trust, and I own this. This was my fault as the leader. It was my lack of accountability. So it was early on in my leadership, in a leadership role. It was a moment where I'd assigned a task to an individual, and we needed some data off a website, and then we had to get that data on Mondays, collected on Mondays. It vanished after Monday. You had to go in and get it back in the day. And I was collecting it on an Excel sheet. And then what I wanted to do was look at it after 6 months because I wanted to see the 6-month trend. And it was only available on Mondays. You had to go quick get it on Monday before it went away. And so I showed her how to get it, where to get it, go get it on Monday, put it in this spreadsheet. We did the first one together. We did the second one together. And then I knew she was trained. I showed her where to do it. And then I was going to look back at it after 6 weeks or after 6 months. And we did the first one together. We did the second one together. I didn't check back in. 6 months comes and I go to look at the data. So I know she knows how to do it and those sorts of things. 6 months later, I go to look at the spreadsheet, and the data has the first one that we did together, has the second one that we did together, and it has none of the other data in there. So I'm missing 6 months of data. It's completely blank. And I'm like, dude, where's my data? It's not there. And my instinct is like, ah, right. So I'm frustrated, and I'm a young new leader. I don't know what I'm doing here. And I'm frustrated. And I'm like, talk to me about this. Talk to me about where's my data. And she's like, well, I didn't collect it. And I'm like, why didn't you collect it? She said, because you didn't tell me it was important. And I'm like, what do you mean I didn't tell you important? I said, did you know how to do it? She said, yep, I knew how to do it. I said, did you have the tools? She said, yep, I had the tools. I said, did you know when to do it? She said, yep, I knew when. Did you know where? She said, yep, I knew where. I said, can you tell me again why you didn't do it? She said, because you didn't tell me it was important. I said, but it's on your job description. It's on your roles. We talked about when and where and how, and it needed to be done every Monday. She said, yep. But when you showed me that something was important, you always followed up on it. And you never followed up on this one. And so that told me that you didn't think this was nearly as important as everything else. And so I just didn't do it. We had so much else going on. This didn't make the radar. And I knew it. And like me, right? I own that. I gave her blind trust that she was just going to do it, and I didn't follow up on it. That was me. I did that. I own that. And I remember teaching this in leadership examples about follow-up and setting clear expectations. And I'll always, when I teach this, I'll always get pushback. And they're like, nope, it was in her job descriptions. It was up to her to do it. And I'm like, but I did this wrong. The accountability is on me as a leader. And I think now I have words that I can use that, yeah, no, I took a shortcut I had no business taking.
Yeah, I always get that same pushback when I'm in leadership teams. It's always a little bit of a dance, and especially when I'm introducing the idea to a leader who doesn't think that it's. And I don't. One thing I would offer as just an addition to the conversation is I don't talk about it in the context of fault. Not sure fault gets us anywhere. What I do, the context I do talk about it in is contribution. Every party has a contribution to the breakdown. So she contributed to the breakdown. It's pretty clear what her contribution was. And then it's much more complicated, possibly, for people to see what the leader's contribution was, your contribution. And that's one of the key characteristics of a good leader is that they can realize and own their contribution to any breakdown on their team or in their organization. And you're exactly right. I mean, your contribution is that there wasn't some system of checking in. There wasn't something that says, hey, at week 4, will you come back to me? Just let me know where we're at. Or, or incrementally every 4 weeks, or, something like that, whatever it is. And here's another one. Here's another piece of or pushback I get on this topic a lot is, well, isn't that micromanaging?
Right.
And I say there's a huge difference between micromanaging and micro check-ins. Micromanaging is me trying to dictate the way you do your job. I am not interested in that. I call that managing activity. I'm not interested in managing activity. I'm interested in managing results. Are we getting the results that we said we were going to get? And so that's the difference. And it's very minute, but if you will micro check in, or have systems for micro check-in rather than micromanage, people will actually be empowered by that process, because look, they get to tell you and show you what they're up to, and you have a genuine interest in hearing that. And so do we want to move on to the next
Yeah,
type
let's
of
move on to the
trust?
next one. So what's the other option then? Do we got blind trust? What's the other option? What's the second type?
So the other type of trust is what I call mature trust. And this is often talked about as trust and verify. So that's a very common term for this type of trust in the corporate kind of business world. And I think it's good, but I don't think it quite captures it.
Okay.
So mature trust is, I trust you knowing that you could betray me at any moment. Now, let's talk about the word betray. And I use it on purpose because it gets that reaction. Those people who aren't watching video or just as the audio, it's just like you have this like, oh, that's gross. I don't love that. I don't love that term. And I use the term on purpose because I want to exaggerate the impact of what this has. And ultimately, if you engage in blind trust, betrayal is what you will experience on large scales, probably at moments, and then on very small scales that you probably don't even notice. So betrayal is just when I tell you that I'll do something and I don't, or I tell you I won't do something and I do. And Jordan Peterson has this really beautiful analogy that I use when I talk with this about clients, and it's been really helpful for me. And he always has such a interesting way of saying things. But he says, we all have snakes in us. The human nature is that we have snakes in us. And where true trust lies is knowing that often or sometimes those snakes can come out, but we can recover it. We can stay connected through it. And what he means is that we all as humans have the ability to betray each other. You've done it. I've done it. It's things we don't want to admit, but we've done it. And sometimes it's not always or often out of malice. It's often out of not paying attention,
Sure.
or being busy, or being distracted, or not feeling like it. Like all of those things. They usually show up much more innocent than malice, but their betrayal still the same. It doesn't it I don't delineate betrayal or non-betrayal because of what got us here. It is just betrayal. And so the idea that that could come up for you, like if we choose to have a project together, and let's say we decide we're going to do this thing together, and you make some promises to me, and then you go home on a Tuesday night, and that Tuesday afternoon, we're all pumped. We're committed to exactly what we're up to. You go home Tuesday night and your dog is sick and is going to need to be put down. And your priorities shift all of a sudden. And you may not even pay attention to a promise that you had made to me the next morning because this new thing happened. And betrayal happens. It's not a problem. Things like that happen, and then there's other other examples that aren't as innocent or aren't as understandable, but they're still the same. And if I'm paying attention and you don't complete your promise to me the next morning, I'm going to be interested in you. What's going on with you that you didn't keep your promise with
Right.
me? Or if
Right.
I'm checking in with you on the next morning and going, "Hey, great conversation last night. So excited about where we're going. Is there anything coming up for you that would prevent you from, completing this thing that you promised?" And then that'd be a great moment for you to be like, "Oh, this came up and here's what I'm struggling with, and we may need to renegotiate this promise." And that is what mature trust looks like,
Mm.
is that I trust you knowing that you could betray me at any moment. And so I'm going to pay attention to you. I'm going to ask you questions. I'm going to stay engaged in a way that I know that could happen. And I'm committed to being with you through the process.
Mm. And that takes so much more emotional intelligence. That takes so much more energy. That takes so much more commitment and desire to be present with that other human.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. And the one thing I want to add here, this is where most leaders get tripped up, is that most betrayal happens in little moments early on, that if we're not paying attention, either we miss them or we can convince ourselves that they're so little that we don't need to do anything about them.
But our gut probably told us they were there.
That's right. Something inside of us said, "Oh, that doesn't seem quite right. The way she said that, or the way he related to that, or he didn't get that done. But it's not a big deal, and we've got a lot to deal with, and we're just going to keep going." And then that behavior continues, but it's on a different trajectory now. I love the principle or the analogy of the rocket ship. If the rocket ship's off by a single degree on Earth, as it launches down there in southern Florida, if it's off by a degree, it misses its target by 1,000,000 miles, right? And those degrees, I would say every member of your team is showing you those degrees by little things. And if you're willing to pay attention to them and interrupt them when you see them, then you can put the rocket ship back on course, and you guys end up landing where you intend to land.
And that again it's not micromanaging, it would be a micro check-in. It's a, hey, wait, did I hear that right? Is
That's right.
something doesn't feel right here. Is that the word that you just said? Did I read that wrong? Are you going to still be here
Yeah.
tomorrow? Did we say 9 o'clock?
Right. That's right. That's
Yeah.
exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's not micromanaging. That's because I don't want micromanaging. Nobody wants to be micromanaged. Nobody wants the
No.
effort of micromanaging, but micro check-ins, that idea of, hey, did I hear that right? Did we
Yeah.
said 9 o'clock, right? You
Yeah.
still gonna be here tomorrow?
I love that Brene Brown says, clarity is kindness. And so many times we relate to clarity as micromanaging, and that is not the case. If you feel like that, and what I mean by clarity is being willing to investigate in detail and specificity our promises with each other, that's kindness. When we're willing to keep things vague and undetermined and all that is the opposite of kindness,
Yes.
because now people aren't clear on what they're committed to. They're not clear that you're clear, and you probably aren't. And so the clarity is needed on your end first. But man, if the more specific and the more detailed you can be with each other, the more that's an act of kindness.
Also, like one of the tools I use in this case, and you can react to this and see what variation of this you have. I use a tool like the story I'm telling myself here, or the way I see it, or
Yes.
I use something that says, here's, and I use the words, the story I'm telling myself, and then I'll
I
ask
use
what,
the exact same phrase. I love it.
yeah,
Yeah.
help me see it from where you're sitting. Like from where I sit, it looks like this. What does it look like from where you sit?
Yeah. I'll use what I'm making up is.
Oh yeah.
Right? What I'm making up is when I heard you say this thing, what I'm making up is that you weren't quite, you weren't exactly clear on what the expectation is. Can I just check in with you again, just so we make sure we're clear?
Yep. The story I'm telling myself is this. Is that what you're
Yeah,
telling yourself? Yep.
it's such a useful tool as long as you mean it.
Yeah.
I've taught that to leaders and I've seen them weaponize it. Um, and so with anything can be weaponized, right?
Yeah.
It's like they'll use the phrase, but it's the tone of it and the come from is like I'm still right and you're wrong and you're doing something wrong. You have to actually mean it and have the presence of it. And if you look at your role of a leader and admit to yourself that you are wrong often and okay with that, then you can actually mean it.
Yeah.
In those cases, I want to be wrong. In cases of like checking in on people not keeping their promises and stuff, like I want to be wrong. I want to be missing something.
Yep. I had one this morning. This morning before our call, I had one of these this morning. I'm like, okay, so we're having a one-on-one with an employee, and I'm like, okay, you got to help me out here because in this, I'm really, really curious. I'm genuinely curious because it looks from where I sit, it looks like this, and I don't understand why you would take an action on this and not an action on this. Help me see what is it that makes you decide which ones you're going to act on because I don't see the difference. And she said, oh, well, I can tell you that is actually just a communication thing because I took action on both of these. I just hadn't communicated about the second one. So what I need to work on is, she said, what I need to work on is I need to communicate better because I'd actually taken the action immediately on both of them. I just hadn't told you about the second one. I'm like, oh, that makes so much more sense because I couldn't
Yeah.
figure out why you were picking it. She's like, yeah, no, I just forgot to tell you about it. I'm like,
I'm so
oh,
glad I'm wrong.
I'm so glad I'm wrong.
Yeah.
I'm so glad I'm wrong. It was so fun to be wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and we had a good laugh about it. I love the moments that I'm wrong. Yeah, yeah. When you approach with genuine curiosity, this is fun. But anyway, we're getting off track here. So blind trust and mature trust, these two different kinds of trust, really, really lovely. I'm gonna struggle for a bit with that idea of betray. That's such strong language. It hit me in the gut when you use that language. So I gotta wrestle with that for a bit. But I
Yeah.
see
It's
I see why you use it.
it's really beneficial. I mean, for me, because I have the same guttural reaction is just like, ugh. And then if I break a like I think about it in the terms of my 11-year-old boy, right? I break a promise to him. If I say I'm going to be somewhere or do something, I just did this the other day. It was middle of the day. He needed a ride to his breakdance studio. I had a packed day, but had said that I could break away to go give him a ride. And I completely missed it. I completely missed it. I didn't do what it takes. Like I didn't put it on my calendar. I didn't set an alarm on my watch. And I betrayed him. And I use that term because I want it to hurt. I want it to hit me in the gut, to actually look at the impact that I'm having on him. And he's going to receive that as a betrayal. He did. And so I'm going to go clean it up like a betrayal, not like, oh, dad just made a mistake. It's not a big deal. I'm really busy, blah, 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 blah. It's like, no, man, I missed you. And that's not who I want to be for you.
Oh, that ability to then take the accountability for it and make it right. Oh, that's really lovely. So thank you. What haven't we covered as we're getting close to wrapping up? What haven't we touched on that you want to make sure our listeners hear about these two types of trust?
I always want to leave with something practical that people can take away because a lot of this can feel philosophical, but I think we've actually weaved a lot of practicality into this conversation. Um, and I'll just reiterate some things. Be detailed and specific in your conversations, in your asks and your requests. Make sure they're actually requests, not statements. So statement sounds like this. It would be great if you did this. Or it would be nice, or I would really like it if you. That is a statement, my friends. It is not a request. A request sounds like this. Will you do it? And will you have it done by Friday at 5 p.m.? That is a request and it's specific. It has a what and a by when. And so get into the practice of making specific requests, because trust is built on specificity. It's built on how much can I rely on you for clarity, because that's going to be kind. So that's one. Be detailed and specific in your follow-up and inquiry, not in a micromanaging way, but in a micro check-in way. Hey, what's going on with this? From your example of the data, what's the data looking like? What are the trends that you're noticing? Have you had any trouble gathering the data? Like, and then I can be a resource to them rather than a micromanager, or I'm just checking in because I don't think you're doing it. That sort of come from. Pay attention to that gut feeling, that when something is said or something is done that's not quite aligned with what you guys say you're up to, pay attention to it and act on it. It doesn't have to be a big deal. It can just be like, hey, real quick, I'm just checking in. I heard you say this. I don't know what's going on. I just want to check in on that and make sure we're still aligned on what we're going for. But it always happens here first, and you're like, oh, that doesn't seem right. Something's off. That's listen to that and act on it. And then be willing to say what you see. Be willing to say what you see, even if it's wrong, and present it that way. Hey, I may be making something up here. I could be completely off base. I think I'm wrong, or I know I'm missing something. And, those sort of statements or questions can really produce some results where you guys stay connected and keep trust intact.
Nice. Nice. Those are all super, super actionable. Thank you. Thank you for that. Um, this, for those of you who have just joined us in, you got to go back to the beginning. We've heard some great insights here from Chad Brown. We're talking about two types of trust. And Chad, this would not be the Even Better podcast if I did not ask my trademark question. What's
I've
making
been
you
excited
even
for this.
better?
I've
Right?
been
What's making
excited for this
you
question.
even better these days?
As I've listened to your episodes, I'm like, oh, that's such a great question. What would I answer? And it hit me this just as we were logging on, and I don't want to distract from the conversation that we've just had, but I also want to be really honest. I don't want to leave it. This is not anyway, I'll just say it and then what's making me even better is that a month ago, my wife lost her mom unexpectedly. She died in her sleep. She healthy. We were adventuring with her the day before. And what's making me even better is watching and getting to experience the way that she's navigating this, the way that she's experiencing the grief and being with the grief, the way that she's honoring her mother, the way that she's being with our kids through all of this is like, it is, I am such a better human having gone through this with her and watching her strength and her presence and her willingness is just like molding me to the max.
Oh, wow. I'm sorry for her loss and humbled by the way you put that. That's really lovely. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, no
Yeah.
problem.
So thank you. If our listeners want to reach out to you, of course they can reach out to us and we'll connect them with you. Other ways that they can find you, Chad?
Yeah, absolutely. LinkedIn is a great place to find me. I've got a bunch of resources on there. I'm pretty active. I'll respond to any, messages on there. I also have a small private group for entrepreneurs. These are usually entrepreneurs within like the 300 to $1 million year revenue. I host a small and private mastermind where we have weekly calls. We support each other. We share resources. We hire each other. It's really, really fun. And that's also something if you fit that category and sounds like something that you want in your life. So many of these people are lonely, operating their businesses and leading. And so the idea here was to come to a place where you could relate to people. So I also share that link as well. And would love anybody that's looking for that kind of community around business and leadership. Would love for them to join us.
You bet. Thank you. Thank you so much. And so thank you for your time and your insights, Chad. This has just been an absolute joy.
Yeah, my pleasure. You're such a generous host. I loved the time. Thank you.
Thank you. And to our listeners, thanks so much for joining in. And on behalf of all of us here at Your Clear Next Step, we hope the rest of your day is even better.
Thank you for tuning in today. The Even Better podcast will be back with more content soon. But in the meantime, subscribe to our podcast or check out our website at yourclearnextstep.com for more information. See you next episode.